You know exactly what this feels like, don't you? One passive-aggressive comment, one disrespectful glance, one carefully chosen jab, and your face flushes, your jaw tightens, your pulse tells on you before your mouth even opens. You try to stay composed, but they already got what they came for. They found the nerve, they mapped the trigger, they pulled the reaction out of you, like a thief lifting a wallet. And then society handed them the blueprint. Be authentic, be open, wear your heart on your sleeve, explain yourself, show your feelings. They called that virtue. In reality, for the wrong people, it is exposure. It is a free map to your pressure points. It turns you into a walking dashboard of emotional data. But that stops here. If you are tired of being an open book for people who only open you to tear out pages, stay exactly where you are. Today, you learn the dark art Machiavelli understood better than most people ever will. The power to reveal almost nothing, and therefore surrender nothing. That is the forbidden answer to the question nobody wanted you to ask. What if your authentic vulnerability is the exact weapon they are using to destroy you? Then indiscriminate honesty is not courage, it is leaked intelligence. Manipulators do not need your diary, they need your tells, your sigh, your defensive smile, your rushed explanation, your trembling voice, your micro-expressions, your need to be understood. Their manipulation tactics are primitive but brutally effective. They provoke. You react, they calibrate, they repeat. That is dark psychology in its simplest form. Not magic, not genius, just feedback loops. And the person who controls the feedback controls the frame. This is what you are going to learn today. You are going to learn why your emotional transparency has been turned against you, how toxic people use your reactions as sonar, how to shut down that sonar completely, how to control your micro-expressions, how to use silence for frame control, and how to become so unreadable that the people who once fed on your reactions begin to lose balance in your presence. Not because you attack them, because you give them nothing, no panic, no anger, no visible injury, no proof of access. If these ideas resonate with you, hit that subscribe button for more top-tier content. Also, drop a "show nothing" in the comments so I know you're ready. Let's dive in. Before you learn to become unreadable, you need to understand exactly how they have been reading you. Most exploitative people are not deep, they are repetitive. They use the same manipulation tactics again and again because human beings are shockingly predictable when emotionally exposed. A toxic boss makes a small public joke at your expense and watches your face. A controlling partner withdraws warmth and watches your tone. A jealous colleague withholds information and watches whether you scramble, over-explain, or plead for clarity. They are not just speaking to you, they are scanning you. They are reading your nervous system the way a predator reads movement in water. An emotional reaction is a currency. Why are you paying people who disrespect you? That question should sting, because you have been paying in the most expensive currency you have: attention, exposure, and emotional access. Every visible surge of anger tells them what matters to you. Every defensive explanation tells them where you feel uncertain. Every rushed attempt to correct the record tells them they can move you. And when they discover they can move you, they know they can manage you. If they can make you angry, they own you. If they can make you defend yourself, they own you. This is why so many intelligent people keep losing power to less intelligent people. Intelligence without control leaks. Emotional intelligence is not the ability to feel deeply in public on command. Emotional intelligence is the ability to understand emotion without being ruled by it. It is the ability to feel the heat, recognize the trigger, and refuse to turn that internal event into public information. That is not repression. That is containment. That is strategic privacy. Machiavelli understood something most people still resist because it sounds too cold for polite company. Once people can predict your inner weather, they can schedule their behavior around your storms. The moment they know what will make you flinch, they have the beginnings of frame control. Not because they are stronger than you, because you gave them a measurement system. And this is where dark psychology becomes useful, not as a tool to control others, but as manipulation defense. You stop asking, why are they doing this? And start asking, what data are they collecting from me right now? That single shift changes everything. Suddenly the conversation is no longer about your wounded pride. It is about their information harvest. Suddenly you stop seeing a rude comment as an insult and start seeing it as bait. Suddenly you understand that the real game is not about who is right. It is about who stays unmeasured. But hiding your emotions will backfire if you don't understand the predator's sonar. Because if you try to become unreadable without understanding what they are reading, you will just perform coldness. And performed coldness is still readable. It has strain in it, effort, tightness, overcompensation. The manipulator will see that too. They always do. They can smell forced silence. They can see fake indifference. They can hear the tremor beneath the short answer. So the first law is simple. Your goal is not to look powerful. Your goal is to stop providing usable feedback. Your greatest weakness in this game is actually your dormant weapon. The very sensitivity that made you vulnerable can make you formidable once it is disciplined. Because when a perceptive person becomes strategically quiet, the room changes. You stop broadcasting. You start observing. You stop being the target. You become the terrain. And once you see the sonar, you cannot unsee it. Every smirk becomes a probe. Every guilt trip becomes a test. Every fake misunderstanding becomes a fishing expedition, which means the next question is unavoidable. If their power depends on reading you, then what exactly have you been teaching them about you all these years? You were told that being emotionally transparent makes you trustworthy. You were told that saying exactly how you feel makes you mature. You were told that if you have good intentions, people will honor them. That story collapses the moment you deal with someone who treats openness as inventory. What if your authentic vulnerability is the exact weapon they are using to destroy you? Then your first responsibility is not expression, it is selection. Who gets access? When do they get it? How much do they get? In what form? Under what conditions? Real maturity is not emotional exhibition. Real maturity is disciplined disclosure. You do not owe raw access to people who have not earned clean hands. This is the trap that catches the betrayed intellectual every time. You assume that because you speak sincerely, the other person is also operating sincerely. You assume that because you are explaining to resolve, they are listening to understand. You assume that because you feel deeply, showing it will create connection. But some people do not use vulnerability for connection. They use it for targeting. They are not touched by your honesty. They are informed by it. You say, I've just been under a lot of stress lately. They store it. You say, I hate being ignored. They store it. You say, I'm very loyal, but disrespect really gets to me. They store it. You think you are building intimacy. They are building a user manual. This is why just be yourself is such dangerous advice when taken literally. Which self? The exhausted self? The hurt self? The triggered self? The self that wants immediate relief and therefore over-reveals? You were taught that authenticity means instant transparency. Machiavellian strategy says something very different. It says the visible self is a tool. The hidden self is a reserve. Not every truth belongs in public. Not every feeling deserves release. Not every person qualifies for access. Machiavelli knew that mystery generates far more fear than anger ever could. Why? Because anger gives shape. Anger tells the room where you are wounded. Anger reveals what you want. anger announces that the bait worked. Mystery gives them nothing to hold. And people who depend on manipulation tactics hate empty hands. You think being quiet is enough. It's not. I'll show you why your eyes are still giving you away. Because even when your words go silent, your face often keeps speaking. Your eyebrows lift, your mouth compresses, your blink rate changes, your gaze drops, your throat tightens. These micro-expressions are tiny betrayals of inner movement, and skilled provocateurs live off tiny betrayals. They do not need a confession, they need a flicker. That is why being unreadable is not about saying less alone. It is about creating coherence between your inner restraint and your outer signal. Your words, your timing, your face, your posture, and your pace all have to tell the same story. Access denied. And let's be precise here. This is not a philosophy for punishing healthy people or creating fake distance in honest relationships. In a healthy bond, vulnerability is sacred. In a manipulative dynamic, vulnerability without boundaries is self-abandonment. The system needs you to believe those are the same thing. Your freedom begins when you see the lie. Stop for a moment and calculate the energy you waste on explaining yourself to people already committed to misunderstanding you. Stop for a moment and calculate how much of your mental fortitude gets burned, not by real conflict, but by rehearsing better reactions after the fact. Stop for a moment and calculate how often your suffering begins, not with what they did, but with the fact that you showed them it worked. That ends when your openness becomes selective, your silence becomes intentional, and your presence stops functioning like an emotional confession booth. But if you want to become truly unreadable, you cannot stop at philosophy. You need visible control. You need your face to stop betraying your mind. Your face is currently betraying your mind. We are going to sever that connection, not by becoming a statue, not by becoming robotic. That would be obvious, unnatural, and weak in its own way. We are going to do something far more powerful. We are going to build a neutral baseline so stable that your internal reaction no longer spills out in real time. I'm going to teach you how to physically control your micro-expressions, but first understand this. Trying to look strong makes you look strained. Trying to look unbothered often broadcasts that you are very bothered. True unreadability comes from reducing output, not acting harder. Start with the forehead. Most people announce surprise, irritation, and insecurity there first. When pressure rises, keep the forehead quiet. Do not lift it. Do not furrow it. Let it stay smooth. Then the jaw. A clenched jaw is a confession. It tells the room a battle is happening inside you. Let the teeth separate slightly. Let the tongue rest gently against the roof of the mouth. That single adjustment will interrupt the chain reaction that runs from anger to facial leakage. Now, the eyes. This is where most people fail. They think being unreadable means staring hard. It does not. A hard stare is still a reaction. It is challenge. It is visible effort. It is emotional output in disguise. What you want is stillness, soft focus. Direct enough to show you are present, calm enough to show you are unmoved. The most unnerving thing to a manipulator is not rage. It is a target who looks at them with cold, still eyes and gives them no emotional temperature to read. Your breathing matters more than your expression because breath drives expression. When you inhale sharply, your body prepares for conflict, your throat tightens, your voice rises, your micro-expressions intensify. So when provoked, delay the reply and lengthen the exhale. The exhale is the reset switch. 4 seconds in, 6 seconds out if you can manage it without making a performance out of it. Quietly, invisibly. This is not meditation theater. This is nervous system frame control. Then slow your blink rate, not to a creepy level, just enough to stop the rapid blinking that signals stress and internal agitation. Let your face become economical. Let every visible movement be chosen. You are not suppressing emotion because you are weak. You are containing it because it is yours. You are not hiding your feelings because you are weak. You are hiding them because they are none of their damn business. And notice what happens when you do this. The person probing you has to work harder. Their manipulation tactics become clumsier. They repeat themselves. They press for a reaction. They get louder, more sarcastic, more dramatic. Why? Because the usual measurement tools stopped working. The emotional dashboard went dark. This is where emotional intelligence separates the strategist from the reactor. The reactor feels emotion and performs it. The strategist feels emotion, names it internally, and chooses what the room gets to see. That choice is your leverage point. That is the beginning of being unreadable. But do not make the beginner's mistake of thinking the blank face alone wins the exchange. It does not. Your face can be disciplined, and your timing can still betray you. You can look calm and answer too fast. You can keep your expression neutral and still rush to explain. You can hide the flash and still surrender the frame. If you react too quickly in the next scenario, your mask will slip. Here is how to prevent it. You must learn to separate stimulus from response, not by a second if you can manage 2, not by 2 if you can manage 3. That small gap does not just calm you, it changes status. The person who answers instantly is often being moved by the moment. The person who pauses appears to be moving the moment itself. That is why silence is not absence. Silence is pressure. And that brings us to the technique most people know about, but almost nobody knows how to use properly. The pause. Not awkward silence, not passive silence, strategic silence, the kind that quietly shifts frame control back into your hands. Watch how their confidence starts to crack when you deploy the power of the pause. A manipulator expects a rhythm. They jab, you react. They accuse, you defend. They imply, you explain. They withdraw, you pursue. The entire structure of their control depends on tempo. Fast tempo favors the provocateur because speed collapses reflection. Speed makes you reveal. Speed turns feeling into behavior before judgment can intervene. So you break the rhythm. They say something disrespectful. You do not rush to correct it. You let 2 or 3 beats pass. You breathe once. You keep the face quiet. Then if a reply is necessary, you make it shorter than they expected and flatter than they wanted. What did you mean by that? That question is devastatingly effective when delivered without heat, not because it is aggressive, because it forces definition. Most manipulation tactics thrive in implication, vague insults, ambiguous digs, plausible deniability. The moment you make them clarify, they lose camouflage. A healthy person clarifies. A manipulative person squirms, escalates, or pretends you are too sensitive. Either way, you learn something valuable while revealing almost nothing yourself. Here is another line that preserves frame control. You are free to think that. Notice what it does. It does not agree. It does not plead. It does not counterattack. It refuses the invitation to enter their emotional arena. It leaves their opinion with them. That is power, not because it dominates them, because it protects you from the trap of defending your worth to someone who benefits from your defense. If they push for an instant answer, say, "I'll respond when I've decided." If they demand emotional reassurance, say, "I heard you." If they try to pull you into circular conflict, say, "I'm not repeating myself." If they bait you with accusation, say, "That is your interpretation." These are not magic phrases. The power is in the delivery, slow, even, low, no sarcasm, no tremor, no over-explanation. Frame control is not just what you say, it is what your nervous system says while you say it. An emotional reaction is a currency. Why are you paying people who disrespect you? The pause is how you stop paying on impulse. And understand the deeper game here. Silence is not only defensive, silence reveals hierarchy. The person who can tolerate the pause without scrambling often controls the emotional frame. Most people talk to reduce their own discomfort. The moment you stop doing that, you become difficult to steer. You become unreadable, not because you vanished, but because you stopped filling every silence with self-disclosure. This is also where your emotional intelligence becomes visible in the strongest possible way. Not in dramatic self-expression, in regulation, in precision, in the refusal to let another person set your internal pace. Emotional intelligence without boundaries becomes self-betrayal. Emotional intelligence with boundaries becomes command presence. But there is a trap here too. If you use silence while your body still screams distress, you are only half protected. If you use silence as passive aggression, you become predictable again. If you use silence to punish instead of to stabilize, you will escalate the wrong battles and drain yourself anyway. The power pause is not a performance. It is a reset. It is you declining immediate access to your interior. And then comes the moment most people mishandle. The manipulator senses the shift. They realize the old levers are failing. They try harder. They probe more directly. They become sweeter, crueler, louder, or more dramatic. This is the exact moment the manipulator will try to provoke you. Here is your counter move. Do not break the new pattern just because the old predator is panicking. Because once they stop getting data, something very predictable begins to happen. They start projecting into the blank space you created, and that is where the entire balance of the relationship changes. We're about to enter the phase where you actually win the war, and it does not look like victory to people addicted to theatrics. When you become unreadable, the people who once controlled the interaction through your reactions begin to lose certainty. They do not know whether the bait landed. They do not know whether you are hurt, angry, amused, done, or simply observing. And uncertainty is intolerable to people who rely on control. They begin to fill the silence with their own fears, assumptions, and projections. Not because you attacked them, because you removed the mirror they used to measure themselves. This is what many people call the paranoia phase, but understand it correctly. Your job is not to torment people or play games. Your job is to stop feeding a manipulative system. The uncertainty they feel is the natural consequence of losing unauthorized access to your interior. That is not cruelty. That is a boundary finally being enforced. Machiavellian strategy is often misunderstood as aggression. Real Machiavellian strategy is economy, minimal disclosure, maximum observation, clear boundaries, controlled timing. You do not need to overpower every room. You need to stop leaking power in every room. That is a very different discipline. So what happens next? Usually one of four things. First, they escalate provocation. They become ruder because subtle bait stopped working. Your answer is not bigger emotion. Your answer is smaller output. Fewer words, slower pace, cleaner eye contact, lower voice. Second, they switch to forced intimacy. They become suddenly curious, apologetic, warm, concerned. Not always because they changed, but because they lost their read on you and want it back. Do not reward sudden softness with immediate emotional access. Let consistency earn what intensity once stole. Third, they accuse you of being cold, distant, arrogant, different, or hard to read. Good. That means the old map no longer works. You do not need to defend the new boundary. You simply say, I'm being more careful with my energy. Nothing more. Fourth, they look for your weak angle elsewhere, through text, through third parties, through guilt, through urgency. This is why your unreadable presence must extend beyond the room. Delay replies when possible. Shorten explanations. Refuse bait disguised as confusion. The same manipulation tactics wear different clothes in different channels. You think being quiet is enough. It's not. Your timing, your face, your words, and your digital behavior all have to match. That is what makes someone truly unreadable. That is why frame control is not an attitude. It is a system. And here is the deepest irony. The moment you stop chasing control over them, you recover control over yourself. The system told you power meant winning arguments, exposing liars, making them admit what they did, finally saying the perfect sentence that leaves them speechless. Sometimes that happens, often it doesn't. The real victory is more brutal and more elegant. You become so internally ordered that their chaos can no longer reorganize you. The most unnerving thing to a manipulator is not a louder victim. It is a silent strategist. This is dark psychology turned outward for defense, not domination. This is emotional intelligence with armor. This is mental fortitude made visible through stillness. This is the answer to a world that trained you to overshare, over-explain, overreact, and then blamed you for being easy to exploit. But to hold this line under pressure, you need one last thing. One physical anchor that keeps you from breaking character when the old trigger comes flying at you from point-blank range. Because your unreadable face, your paused response, and your frame control will mean nothing if your body drags you back into the old pattern. You started this video as someone whose reactions were being harvested. You do not leave it that way. You came here as an open book. You leave as selective access. You came here readable, explainable, measurable. You leave as a psychological fortress, not closed to the worthy, closed to the predatory. That is the distinction that changes your life. Remember the journey. Betrayal taught you where you leaked. Recognition showed you the pattern. Anger gave you the energy to stop tolerating it. Validation gave you permission to admit that your openness had been used against you. Now weaponization gives you method, and invincibility begins with one ruthless principle. Starve them of your reactions forever. If they cannot map your triggers, their manipulation tactics weaken. If they cannot read your micro-expressions, their confidence drops. If they cannot rush your timing, frame control returns to you. If they cannot feed on your exposure, you become unreadable. That is the entire game. So here is the physical anchor I promised you. The moment you feel the old surge, do this in silence. Put your tongue on the roof of your mouth. Relax your jaw. Drop your shoulders 1 inch. Exhale longer than you inhale. Keep your forehead still. Let your eyes soften and hold. That 5-second sequence will interrupt the body's urge to confess itself to the room. Practice it until it becomes automatic. This is not just calm. This is command. And make this commitment concrete. Comment, show nothing. If you are done giving emotional access to people who weaponize it. Comment, show nothing. If you are done explaining your pain to people studying it. Comment, show nothing if you are ready to become unreadable in the presence of disrespect. If you want more like this, subscribe. Not for noise, for training. For the kind of psychological discipline most people never build because they are too busy performing goodness for an audience that would exploit them without hesitation. This is for the people building internal empires, the people choosing emotional intelligence over emotional exhibition, the people learning dark psychology for manipulation defense, not submission, the people who understand that silence, precision, and self-command are not personality traits. They are strategic advantages. And whatever you do, don't stop here. The video on your screen matters more than you think. It will show you the next layer of control most people never notice until it is used on them. Watch it now while this mindset is still active, while your frame is still strong, while the lesson is still hot. See what others miss, know what others fear, become who others can't.